birth and rebirth in endless rounds of procreation. In shock from the trauma of awakening, the planet is bleak, arid, uninhabitable. But a new arrival will transform the scene. In alchemical matrix of green, allowing all life to flourish.
of human creation, we have looked to plants to nourish us with their flesh, shelter us with their fiber, and enrich our world with their beauty.
Plants, yielding themselves to man, share in his spiritual flowering. The elements of my body are as one with the infinite cycle of creation and all matter in the universe. Chanting the Vedic hymns of creation, devout Hindus reaffirm each day their belief in the unity of all existence. A teeming industrial port located on the Hooghly River, Calcutta gives little indication of the cultural glory that crowns its recent past. Less than half a century ago, learned men from many nations came to a quiet suburban street to visit an institute founded by the great Indian scientist Sir Jagadish Chandra Bose. Inside, unique machines monitor the delicate living responses of plants in a section of the institute dedicated to the works of its founder.
These are special instruments that Bose invented for making studies of the minute movements in plants. During the last years of his life, he was fascinated by the mysteries of plant life. We are fortunate that besides all that he wrote, in his later life, he made many recordings in his own voice in this machine.
It was from those who till the ground and make the land blossom with green bounty that I do my love of nature.
Traveling to England, Bose presented his latest and most significant discoveries in person before a gathering of the most distinguished minds in the scientific world, the 324 fellows of London's Royal Society. In the same hall where Darwin, Huxley, and Faraday made history, the learned gathering listened with polite interest as the obscure Indian scientist described his pioneering measurements of radio waves. Through his experiments, Bose also discovered that both metals and living animal tissue respond in a similar way to the effects of radiation. He postulated, if the continuity exists between such extremes as metal and animal tissue, similar effects should be present in the plant kingdom. Touching the leaves of Mimosa pudica with a cotton soaked in ether, Bose demonstrates the fainting response in a plant. The object of his future experiments was to prove through the design and use of highly specialized machines that all the characteristic responses exhibited by animal tissue are also to be found in plants. The But Bowe's experiments were denied publication by the Royal Society. By daring to suggest that plants have a sensory system similar to humans, Bowes offended the learned members. Meanwhile, in the deep south of the United States, George Washington Carver, a poor black born into slavery, revolutionized American agriculture. With his clairvoyant insight into nature, Carver provided great wealth for his fellow citizens, revitalizing their ravaged soil, a gift for which he was scorned because of his admitted communion with the fairyland of plants. A natural alchemist, Carver transmuted the lowly peanut from hog food into a score of products, all highly profitable. But like Bowes, Carver refused to patent his inventions. God, said Carver, did not charge me or you for making the peanut. Why should I profit from its products? Advanced in their philosophy, neither Bowes nor Carver was fully appreciated in his lifetime.
It was in the actions of the plants that I perceived a prevailing unity that is within all things. The mote that quivers in ripples of light, the teeming life upon the earth, and the radiant suns that shine above us. I understood for the first time that ancient message proclaimed by my ancestors on the banks of the Ganges 30 centuries ago. They who see but one in all the teeming manifoldness of the universe, unto them alone belongs eternal truth, unto no one else.
After 5 decades of obscurity, the legacy of Jagadish Chandra Bose is now revived in San Diego, California.
Welcome to the Baxter School of Lie Detection. I'm Cleve Baxter, and during the next 6 weeks here in San Diego, you're going to be involved in a very intensified instructional course in the use of the polygraph, or so-called lie detector.
In the course of a career dedicated to the investigation for federal and municipal law enforcement agencies, Cleve Baxter has earned a reputation as the world's foremost authority on the polygraph.
Well, as of February 2nd, 1966, I'd been in the polygraph field full-time for 18 years. And this particular morning, I'd been working all night in the laboratory and had decided to water a plant in the lab, very similar to the plant here, Dracaena cane plant. My thought was that as the moisture arrived to the leaf of the plant, the plant should be a better conductor, and I should get a reading on the chart. Well, strangely enough, I didn't get this at all, and in fact, it did just the opposite. Instead of the tracing edging upward as it should have on the chart, it went into sort of a wild excitation, very similar to the first part of a human taking a polygraph test. But then it occurred to me, just about 14 minutes along, what would be the real optimum threat to the well-being of a plant. In fact, the imagery of fire entered my mind, and I not only thought, but I fully intended to burn the very leaf that was being tested with a match. Now, I had no matches in the room at the time, and I don't smoke, and I had to go next door to my secretary's area to get a match. But the interesting thing is that right at the split second that imagery of fire entered my mind, the tracing reflecting the changes in the plant just went right off the top of the page. And the only thing that occurred at that time, no lighting of a match, nothing else, merely the imagery of fire. And I must say that as of 14 minutes along in that initial observation on the morning of February 2nd, 1966, my life just hasn't been the same.
Responding to the initial experience, when a plant apparently read his mind, Baxter works nights on his own in his small laboratory. His goal is to perfect an experiment that will satisfy the rigid criteria of the scientific establishment. Baxter hopes to show that plants react to any termination of life in their immediate environment. During the next 6 hours, at some undetermined moment chosen by a randomizer, these brine shrimp will fall to their deaths in boiling water. By totally automating his equipment, Baxter is determined to eliminate human influence. In another room, completely separate from his laboratory, Baxter has placed a philodendron plant, a polygraph, and a videotape recorder. Carefully, he places a leaf between a pair of electrodes that will monitor the electrical activity of the plant. As he has done during countless police interrogations, Baxter establishes a baseline on his polygraph to get an accurate recording of the reaction of his subjects. The video recorder will tape the details of the experiment in Baxter's absence.
For the automation of this experiment to be successful, I have to get a certain distance away from my lab so that my consciousness won't affect the results. I hadn't previously experienced any direct or indirect exposure to mystical philosophies. My contacts had been well within the establishment, particularly federal government agencies and law enforcement. Before working with plants, I hadn't really thought much about the idea of greater consciousness or awareness. Now I look around, but what I see has a different meaning.
The California dawn often finds Cleve Baxter still at work in a small room behind his laboratory. The results of each night's work must be carefully analyzed and recorded. In spite of his high percentage of successful results, only a few daring individuals from the scientific establishment have come forward with offers to replicate his experiments or test his results. The great majority are content simply to condemn his efforts without taking the trouble to investigate their validity.
A few brine shrimp die and a plant feels their death. I think it's the smallness of the event that makes it so significant. It means that even on the lower levels of life, there's a profound consciousness or an awareness that binds all things together.
Is it coincidence that the plant will grow its petals into an exact replica of a female bee, so alluring to the male bee that he attempts to mate with the petal, and in so doing, pollinates the orchid? In the plant world, there are more than 500 varieties of flesh eaters, ingesting with mouth and stomach anything from hornets to hamburger, using endless cunning, from tentacles to sticky hairs to appetizing aromas or subtle traps with which to capture their prey. At the University of California, Hayward, across the bay from San Francisco, research is presently being conducted on the electrical potential of plants.
And then I try to compare those signals to emotional changes in a human. In other words, we take a person and we sit him away from the plant, and he goes...
Randy Fonts, a researcher in parapsychology, proposes an experiment inspired by Cleve Baxter's initial experience.
Would this constitute a tight, sound scientific experiment?
Dr. Norman Goldstein, a professor of biology and expert in the new science of electrophysiology, agrees to review the results of the experiment, which will determine whether the plant Mimosa pudica actually responds to human emotions.
As you can see, we have a normal copper screen and such as that Faraday cage, block out electromagnetic signals, radiations. But in addition to that, we have a plexiglass over here that blocks the wind movements and ion movements and air flows that would, shake the plant, cause abnormal signals. We also have a motion detector in here, which will allow us to look and see whether any external motions or movements have interfered with the experiment, so we can tell when the plant is actually vibrated.
Where's the subject with respect to the cage now?
We're going to seat him, within a few feet of the cage, probably about 5 feet. And he'll be viewing a screen, he'll be watching a stimulus movie that we're providing. Mm-hmm. And then his emotional responses should carry over into the cage here and affect the plant. That's what we're hoping for.
We're going to be measuring your galvanic skin response, which means your emotional activity.
Okay. Let's hope there is some.
Is that too tight?
No, that's great.
Okay. This is going to measure your blood volume. And this will measure the muscle tension in your forehead, or the EMG.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Good.
That looks very convincing. I have to think about that one. Well, let's say that the experiment is quite well done.
Yeah.
Then you're claiming that the individual's response is producing some kind of energy display. When you're finished analyzing your data and it supports your contentions, you can imagine what importance this will be. You can imagine it'll change our whole picture of how we relate to plants, that we're interacting with them all the time.
Plants react to man-made music. Do humans react to music produced by plants?
In the belief that a tangible expression of plant emotions would bring about a harmonious interaction between human beings and the plant kingdom, artist John Lifton devised what he calls green music. Plants have been wired into a complex computer. Their change of mood as they react to the crowds of visitors will be converted into musical expression.
I'll check that out there and I'd like to play. Okay, Richard.
As the people move among the plants, the sounds they hear are the plants reacting to their presence. An ephemeral exchange of energy, linking two diverse life forms, becomes a symphony of emotions.
Come on now, look at the fern. It's right over there. Now be careful, be very careful. Just don't hurt it.
During recent years, gardening enthusiasts throughout Japan have been privileged to witness the remarkable demonstrations of Dr. and Mrs. Kenneth Hashimoto. Dr. Hashimoto, Managing Director and Chief of Research for the Fuji Electronic Industries, has constructed special instruments which translate the electrical output of plants into modulated sounds, giving voice to a cactus. Relying on her affinity for plants, Mrs. Hashimoto looks forward to actual conversation with her cactus. Convinced that it possesses an intelligence, she is determined to teach it the Japanese alphabet.
Research conducted in the Soviet Union leads scientists to believe that plants may think. Attached to delicate electronic instruments, a cabbage plant registers annoyance to the exhaling of tobacco smoke on its leaf surfaces. A scene familiar in any kitchen takes on special importance in this experiment.
Володя, переключи задание по всем параметрам. Тамара, бери препарат. Все готовы? Начинай.
In some mysterious way, the plant which is attached to the instrument is able to feel the mutilation of its comrade. In a more advanced experiment, technicians were asked to pass through a laboratory containing 2 living cabbage plants. One of the subjects has been instructed to destroy the plant which is not attached to the electronic instruments. Hours later, the technicians are asked to return to the scene of the crime. The evidence is clear. The remaining plant has correctly identified the assailant.
Ты должна быть сердитой.
Since 1959, the Academy of Sciences of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics has advanced research for the application of automation and cybernetics in plant husbandry. Connected to electronic instrumentation, these plants express their wishes directly, without the need of human guidance. In agricultural centers of the future, plants will show themselves to be fully rational beings, controlling their intake of water and nutrients, and even regulating the temperature and humidity of their environment. We're just beginning to understand the language of plants. It is a difficult and fascinating road wherein a multitude of surprises awaits us. From this beginning will come a world of harmony between mankind and nature. Through the gift of human ingenuity, all things are possible. All that we need is a peaceful sky above.
In what seems like the dead of winter, beneath the protecting mantle of ice, forces from faraway galaxies and from deep in the earth are joined in the creation of new life.